Hi, I'm Alan, and this is a video. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to more Geometry Dash. Today, I've decided to do another discussion video because, as you guys know, I did a practice run and tried a little bit of Silent Clubstep the other day, and it left me with a couple questions, as well as a few comments about stuff regarding the fact that once it gets verified, should the level be rated? So I decided to talk about whether or not impossible levels, old impossible levels specifically, should get rated, because it's a pretty interesting topic, I would personally say, because we have had instances in the past where old impossible levels have gotten rated out of just the fact that it's an old impossible level. So I thought one thing that I wanted to talk about, there are a couple topics in general that I think should be covered, and then I'll give my verdict at the end of whether or not I personally think that they should be rated, and then you guys can tell me what you guys think. So the things that we're going to be talking about today are the rate standards for levels, whether or not they meet rate standards, so on and so forth. Were they previously rated or not? Because I think that is something that should be discussed, because I think that's very important to the final rate, if that makes sense. The history of the level, because history is obviously very important to a level when it's that old. And of course, remaster decoration, because, well, the most recent levels have had remaster decoration. So I think that's a topical thing for us to mention. So without further ado, please hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. I would really appreciate it. Let's just hop into talking about whether or not old impossible levels should be rated. Yeah, that's... I really talk about anything on this channel, don't I? So first and foremost, I want to bring up the rate standards, because I think the rate standards for levels is an important thing to bring up when talking about whether or not old impossible levels should be rated, because there's always this discussion of, oh, this level is ugly, it can't be rated. That's what was brought up with AOD, it was brought up with Thinking Space, it's brought up with a lot of levels as to why they're not rated. A lot of people are like, oh, why is stuff like Graceful not rated? And people are like, because it's ugly, it doesn't meet the rate standards. So the rate standards is something that's very, I want to say important, but it's also like, it's such an abstract thing that I'm not quite sure if it's important or not. And there's a lot of levels that just, if they held up back in the day and were just swept under the radar, they can be rated at a later point. There is an example of that. There was this old 1.9 level that got rated not too long ago, which does not meet the rate standard today. That was rated because it just fell under the radar. No one really knew about it up until recently, and then it got rated because it should have been rated back in 1.9, right? And truthfully, I think when it comes to like old impossible levels like Silent Clubstep, there is an argument to be made that for 1.6, when it got made, no, 1.7, sorry, for 1.7, when Silent Clubstep was made, I'm gonna use Silent Clubstep as like the main thing today, it would have been rated weren't it for the fact that it was literally impossible. There was no chance in hell that anyone was ever gonna beat it, right? The fact that it holds up to that rate standard, it just took a really long time for someone to actually verify it, completely fair. It didn't fall under the radar or anything, so it's not like you can bring up the whole, oh, but it wasn't well known, it was just no one had ever beaten it, right? So should the level be up to rate standards today, or should it be up to rate standards for when it was released? I was gonna bring up To the Stars 2 because that got rated, even though it does not meet any rate standards. But that was because it was an old 1.9 level that was lost. Should it have been rated? No, absolutely not. I didn't want it rated. Anyway, that's beside the point. When it comes to the rate standards, I think that it should be like a mix. I think it should be a mix of whether or not they meet the new rate standards and the old one. I think if a level would have been rated back then yeah, 100%. I think it could go for it. However, I also do think that remaster decoration is something that should be considered. But the problem with that is remastering a level that is that important is kind of like a double-edged sword, because let's be real here for a second. How many of you guys saw the Silent Clubstep remaster and thought, that is awesome, that's such an upgrade? It is an upgrade, like objectively it is an upgrade, because there's a lot more effort put into the decoration. However, it also like sucks the soul out of it, and then people are like, oh, the level's terrible now, right? So I think the public perception of like those remasters also kind of like come into play there, and it just kind of becomes like this whole jumbled mess of it's cool but it's not the level anymore. And I think that also came into play a little bit with Succubant Circles, because Succubant Circles was an old impossible level that got remastered, verified, rated, right? But I don't really know if the level necessarily needed it. Like, it always has a legacy mode, right? The legacy mode comes into play and everyone beats it on legacy mode, except for that level for some reason. For some reason, Succubant Circles is easier without legacy mode. Anyway, I think that because of how they, like, use the new decoration to like keep it up to standards is something that should be done in very many cases, especially, and this I think this is an important one. I think remasters personally should only be done and only be necessary if the level has never previously been rated. So for instance, stuff like Element 111 RG I think if that gets somehow verified in its current state, I don't think it needs a remaster for it to be rated, because it was previously rated and unrated because no one had verified it. There was no way anyone had legitimately beaten that level, right? But it was rated, which means that it would have been rated if someone had verified it legitimately back then, right? And I think that should be held as the standard for that, personally. So for like Sigmund Circles, it needed the remaster because no one had previously verified it. It was just an old impossible level. No one dared touch it, right? But it was never rated, therefore it never met that standard because back then no one really cared for proof. So RobTop rated Element 111 RG because it was like, oh, that's a cool level, and then just rated it, and then, oh, dude, this level is not legit, it's not possible, and then it got unrated, so on. Sigmund Circles, however, not the case, and I think personally that should also be the case with Silent Clubstep, because if we go over to the history of the level, so Silent Clubstep has insane amounts of history. It is a very prolific level within the GD community, and is one of those levels that's just like, everyone knows about it, everyone has talked about it, everyone has like fantasized about it. It's one of the first levels that kind of like spawned the whole, in 5 years, this is going to be an easy demon memes, right? People were like, 2015, Silent Clubstep, impossible level, impossible, never going to be beaten. 2016, it's extreme demon, super hard, very doable. 2017, this level was like an insane demon, and so on and so forth, right? It was one of the first levels that truly spawned that meme. It has a lot of history behind it. Everyone and their mother who has played GD knows about Silent Clubstep, especially if you started playing in 2014. Everyone who played 2014 to 2016 knows the level. It's very important to a lot of players, but it was never rated, and therefore I think there should be held like a specific standard that because it was never rated to begin with, I don't think it should be rated unless it has a good remaster that fits with today's standards and is verified legitimately. Obviously, the verified legitimately should be the case regardless. That's just how it is, right? But I do genuinely thoroughly believe that because of the rate standards, I don't think Silent Clubstep should be rated unless the remaster is good. The reason why Silent Club, which Localizer verified, got rated, in my personal opinion, I think the only reason that level ever ended up getting rated was, first and foremost, because everyone loves Localizer, but that's 100% outside the question. It had previously been rated. Silent Club was rated at one point. It was rated for a while. It was rated for like a couple of months before it got unrated because people were like, oh wait, lol, this level's not possible. It's humanly impossible to do this level. Why is this rated? So it got unrated. And then as someone verified it legitimately, it got rated because it was previously rated, right? Therefore, it didn't need to have a remake. It didn't need to be redecorated because of the fact that it had already been rated. The only reason it was unrated was because it was thought impossible, but that was proven otherwise. Silent Clubstep wasn't rated ever, therefore it should get a proper remake. That's what I think. And that's the same with Silent Clubstep. Not Silent Clubstep. It's the exact same with Psychopen Circles. It was never rated prior, therefore it needed a remake, and that remake met the rate standards. Whether or not you agree or not, that's besides the point. That's 100% irrelevant. No one cares about what you think. It's all what RobTops think. But I do think that precedent should be held personally, because otherwise you could just be like, oh, but look at Diabolic Clubstep, right? Yeah, right. I don't really know what I'm trying to say. But anyway, just to like quickly recap everything that I've said, I think there should be held like a specific rate standard that is flexible based on when the level was rated. If it has a legacy mode similar to stuff like Sigmund Circles and probably Silent Clubstep, then the base should be the remastered one, and the remastered one should only be necessary 100% of the time if the level was never previously rated. So stuff like Element 111 RG, Fury of Darkness to an extent. Honestly, personally speaking, I think that so like the old hell levels that were rated should be re-rated and so on and so forth. But that's something I can talk about another day. The history of the level should be taken into question because otherwise there's just a bunch of other random, weird, impossible levels that could get rated, which, depending on who you ask, that could be kind of cool. But I don't really see a reason for it. And then, of course, just the level should be at least somewhat good. That is just my personal opinion. I think if a level has somewhat decent gameplay, like stuff like Theory of Darkness, right? Gameplay is decent. Why not? It could get rated. It was previously rated, so why not, right? But then Element 111 RG, lol. But no, I feel like I've rambled enough. This is a very weird topic because there's so many things that's like could be but couldn't be, you know? I think old impossible levels are they're such a weird topic to discuss in a lot of ways. I think they can get rated. I think my final verdict is that they can be rated under certain circumstances, right? If they've been previously rated, if they have a good remaster, those are like the two main ones. I think if the good remaster fits today's standards, go for it. if it's legitimately verified. If it has previously been rated but unrated because it was impossible, go for it if it's been verified legitimately. That's what I think. Tell me what you guys think. I'm sorry if this video was just white noise. Thoughts a little bit all over the place, because I feel like this is such an interesting topic, all in all. Hopefully this video made some sense, at least. I'll see you guys around. Eat your greens to healthy, stay hydrated. Thank you for making my day better. Hope yours a little bit better too. Goodbye.